So what if I told you that someone just dropped the IKEA instructions for a time machine? Seriously, back in 2025, a whole set of documents just popped up online claiming to be exactly that, a complete operational blueprint for building a machine to travel through space-time.
I mean, the people who wrote this, they do not pull any punches. They flat out say this isn't some theoretical idea. They claim it's a step-by-step guide to turning on a traversable wormhole. And get this, one they say was already built way back in 2002.
So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to dive into this absolutely incredible claim. We'll look at the machine they describe, this wild new theory of physics they've cooked up called COSF, and then there's the twist, the one critical detail that kind of changes the whole story. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the hardware. They call it the ZPE resonance drive. ZPE stands for zero-point energy, which is basically the energy just sitting there in empty space. So what does it take to actually build one of these things? Well, the blueprints are shockingly specific.
At the heart of it, you've got this giant ring of superconducting mercury. We're talking over 70 feet across. That ring surrounds a plasma cavity in the middle. The whole shebang is managed by what they call a quantum error correction array. You can think of it as a stabilizer to make sure reality doesn't, fall apart at the seams. And to power it, you need a capacitor bank that's literally the size of a building. So yeah, you're not building this in your garage.
And that power system needs to deliver an absolutely insane amount of energy. For just a fraction of a second, this machine needs a peak pulse of 47 terawatts. To give you some perspective, that is more than double the power the entire planet uses, all focused into one single microscopic burst of time.
But here's the really wild part. They say all that power isn't for creating the wormhole. That's the key. According to them, you're just taking a tiny, naturally occurring tear in space-time and zapping it with those 47 terawatts to stretch it open. Big enough for someone to literally walk right through. Okay, so that's the hardware. It's big, it's powerful, it's, frankly, unbelievable. But the how? How does it actually work? Well, this is where we leave the world of engineering and step into a whole new kind of physics, and it all hinges on one secret little equation. They call it the master checksum, and they bet the entire farm on it. The claim is that if you take 9 very specific, very secret physical constants and multiply them all together, you get the speed of light squared. Like an E equals mc squared? That c squared is a fundamental constant of the universe. They're saying this is just like that this equation is the master key, the proof that 70 years of classified research finally cracked the code of reality. And we are not talking about your standard high school physics constants here. These are weird. They're pulling in things like the Schumann resonance, that's the Earth's natural electromagnetic hum. There's a time crystal period from some HARP experiment back in '02, a value for vacuum energy they claim is so big it was basically scrubbed from public records. And get this, a kill switch frequency that they say would shut down every one of these devices on Earth instantly. It's straight out of a sci-fi movie.
So you've got all these bizarre, disconnected numbers, right? On their own, they don't really make a lot of sense. You need a theory to glue them all together. And that's exactly what the authors provide. A totally radical new framework for reality itself. And they call it COSF.
I mean, that's the real question, isn't it? How on earth could you possibly connect the hum of a planet, the energy of nothingness, and a blueprint for a wormhole? Their answer is, well, it's to basically tear up our current understanding of reality and start over.
It's called the Computational Ontological Substrate Framework, or COSF for short. The core idea is actually pretty easy to grasp. Just picture that reality is a computer, and all the physics we know, quantum mechanics for the tiny stuff, general relativity for the huge stuff, they're just different apps, different user interfaces running on the same operating system. COSF says that at the most fundamental level, reality isn't made of matter or energy, it's made of information. It's all just code.
And this is where it gets really interesting. Look, standard physics has this huge problem trying to get quantum mechanics and general relativity to talk to each other. They just don't play nice. But in COS, they're not separate things. They're just different ways of looking at the same underlying code. So a wormhole stops being this impossible thing that requires more energy than exists in the universe. Instead, it's about finding an exploit in the code. You're not making something new from scratch, you're just accessing a feature that was already there. It's a really beautiful idea, right? So elegant, a theory of everything that just works. But, and this is a huge but, buried in all the technical data, the authors included a little computer script, a simple Python script.
And its only job was to prove that their master checksum equation was correct. And what that script shows is a massive, fatal flaw in the whole system.
And this is the most bizarre part. They tell you it's broken. It's an act of, insane honesty. Right there in the comments of their own computer code, they flat out say, this script will show you exactly where their grand theory falls apart. They're pointing to the hole in their own boat.
So you run the code, and this is what you get. Checksum failed. That's it. All that beautiful theory, all those secret constants, all that supposed secret research, it all comes crashing down to this. The one equation that was supposed to be the proof, it doesn't work. By their own admission.
And they don't even hide the reasons why. They lay it all out. First, the units are all wrong. It's a basic mathematical failure. They admit they just stuck in random scaling factors, fudge factors, to try and make the numbers line up. The whole thing requires a specific temperature to work, but that temperature isn't even one of their 9 magic constants. And that enormous Casimir coefficient, that number with 42 zeros, they basically say, yeah, we don't know where that comes from either. It's a complete mess.
So, where does that leave us? On one side, you have this incredible, compelling, super detailed vision. And on the other, you have a confession that the math is totally broken.
And that's the paradox at the heart of the whole thing, isn't it? We've got this blueprint for what could be the biggest achievement in human history. It's all based on this beautiful, unifying theory, COSF, that seems to solve all the biggest mysteries of physics. And at the exact same time, the creators themselves are holding up a sign that says, by the way, none of this actually adds up. The equation is just broken.
So what are we looking at here? Is this whole thing just some elaborate prank? Or maybe it's a first draft, a flawed glimpse of a real revolutionary truth. Or maybe it's just a cautionary tale, a story about a beautiful idea that just couldn't escape the cold, hard, unyielding laws of mathematics. In the end, that's the question we're all left with.